if having a lab preceding the lecture helps you or hurts you, but in any event, here we go. Everything starts at the oral cavity. Here's the oral cavity, and these are supposed to be the lips. Here's the tongue, the uvula, and then, of course, there's the pharynx back here. Now, the opening from the oral cavity into the pharynx is called the fauces, F-A-U-C-E-S. The fauces is the opening of the oral cavity into the pharynx behind it. Okay, now the pharynx goes down until it reaches the larynx, and now we have a shift in focus. What we had been doing was looking at the trachea. Now the trachea comes off this way and goes into the lungs, of course. But now this is the esophagus. The esophagus is a long tube that extends from about the Adam's apple ultimately into the stomach. It has to pass through the diaphragm, and I think I showed you that it passes through the diaphragm through a hole called the hiatus. Now, here's the stomach. This connection here serves a dual purpose. It's not clear, but I'm going to tell you in lecture that this is a sphincter, and a sphincter is a fancy name for a muscular valve. This sphincter is supposed to prevent stomach contents from going back into the esophagus. Most of the time it does it fine. However, some people, particularly women who've had children, that sphincter loosens up and stomach contents does indeed regurgitate into the esophagus, causing heartburn, and the scientific name for heartburn is esophagitis. But here's the stomach. You'll notice that the stomach is a J-shaped organ, and it has different properties. You'll also notice that the esophagus does not connect at the very top. It connects about 4 or 5 centimeters below the top. But that part of the esophagus between the opening and the top is called the fundus, F-U-N-D-U-S. That part of the stomach that sits between the opening and the very top of the stomach is called the fundus. Now, the remainder of the stomach the main part of the stomach from here to here is called the body of the stomach, or the soma. And then you'll notice that it narrows down. The narrow part of the stomach, before it enters the small intestines, is called the pylorus, P-Y-L-O-R-I-S. Now things get a little bit funny here. The entrance of the stomach into the small intestines is protected by a second sphincter called, mercifully, the pyloric sphincter. Again, P-Y-L-O-R-I-C, sphincter, S-P-H-I-N-C-T-E-R. Again, it is a muscle, and it's designed to prevent the regurgitation of material in the small intestines returning to the stomach. And again, it generally does its job fairly well. Now then, the first part of the stomach, and they're trying to indicate that here by an opening right here. The first part, I said the stomach, but I meant the small intestines. The first part of the small intestines, which is about 5 or 6 inches long at most, probably about 7 or 8 centimeters, which would be about 3 inches, is called the duodenum. D-U-O-D-E-N-U-M. duodenum, again, as you're going to find out in lecture this morning, has no digestive functions. What does it do? It receives all of the tubes from the liver and the pancreas and a couple of other glands which carry digestive enzymes. Now, this next part causes students a little bit of confusion, and it really shouldn't. You've got to understand that in an average human being, the small intestines are about 22 feet long. And nature had to stuff that 22 feet of tubing into the abdominal cavity. Well, nature couldn't do it in one layer, so it had to do it in 2 layers. However, the first layer that you see here, understanding that there's a second layer and a third layer underneath, is called a jejunum. J-E-J-U-N-U-M. J-E-J-U-N-U-M.
So is there 3 layers or 2 layers?
Yeah, 2, at least 3 usually. The other 2 layers that are hidden underneath are called the ileum. I-L-I-U-M. Then ultimately, the very end of the small intestines, when digestion is completed, occurs right here. There's a valve here also, but it doesn't work. Here it is. However, this area where the small intestines meet the large intestines is called the ilio, I-L-I-O, cecalic, C-E-C-A-L-I-C, juncture, the ilio-cecalic juncture. Now we're in the large intestines. After meeting and getting the contents from the small intestines, which is by this time undigested material, the large intestines goes up the right side, and mercifully it's called the ascending colon. Where were you yesterday?
I told you I wasn't going to be in class on Wednesday.
Now then, there's a corner here. This corner, believe it or not, has a name. It's called the hepatic flexure, H-E-P-A-T-I-C, flexure, F-L-E-X-U-R-E, flexure is Latin for corner. Since it's right under the liver, the hepatic flexure. Then the large intestines goes across the abdomen. This part is called the transverse colon. Then there's another
Corner?
Yeah, I'm waiting for everybody to catch up. Yeah, I got it under control, Valerie. Then right here, there's another corner called the splenic flexure, S-P-L-E-N-I-C, flexure. Then the large intestine starts to go down the left side and is mercifully called a transverse flexure,
Descending.
the descending colon. Oh, here I just told you I had it under control. The descending colon. Down here, there's still another flexure called the iliac flexure. large intestines then turns inward. And it's the famous sigmoid colon. Then it straightens itself out, goes down, it's called a rectum. And I guess I should clarify something here. The rectum is not the hole. It's the terminal end of the large intestines. The hole is called the anal orifice, O-R-I-F-A-C-E. Now, believe it or not, there's another sphincter down here. This one is made of striated muscle and is called the anal sphincter,
And that's between
or
the
simply
rectum.
the anus.
And that's between the rectum and the anal.
No, it's right at the end of the hole.
Oh, okay.
As a matter of fact, you guys can flex it. It's made of striated muscle. Go ahead. Did you flex it okay?
Totally.
Brian? Did it flex okay for you? Okay. In case you haven't figured it out, the anus, that's what it's called, is there to prevent feces from dribbling out. So if you're running around calling people anuses, it's a muscle that's a compliment rather than a derogatory term. All right. That'll be enough for today. We'll finish it up on next Friday. Yes.
Oh, okay. I just,
Well, why? You want to know about the liver?
no, I thought he was gonna, talk about, I think that's the appendix coming off of the colon.
Oh, the appendix?
Yeah.
Yeah, guys, here's the appendix, this wormy, fingerly-like thing. As a matter of fact, I think I may have forgotten to tell you that the portion at which the small intestines connects to the large intestines is called the cecum, C-E-C-U-M, and then the cecum curves over a little bit to go up the right side.
Did you say cecums were small intestine meets large intestine?
Cecum is small, yeah, it's only 2 or 3 inches long.
That's awesome. Did you say that's where the small intestine meets the large? What's the definition of cecum again?
Cecum is the initial part of the large intestines.
Thank you.
It's called a cecum because it's shaped like the letter C.
Okay.
Anything else? Okay, again, you want to walk out of here this morning perfectly confident that in about 4 weeks you'll be able to recognize these items under the pressures of an examination. As you'll notice, it's not too hard. The only difficulty here is imagining the jejunum from the ileum, in my opinion. There are a few other items, but we got to save something for next week. Okay.